Hello, and welcome back to Attack on Titan Enthusiasts. There are a lot of strong and cool female characters done right in this story. Among them, Annie Leonhardt is as strong, calm, and beautiful as the main heroine Mikasa. Mikasa is from the Ackerman family, which can draw on some of the Titans' powers without transforming, giving them superhuman strength. But Annie is different. She may not have Mikasa's super strength, but when it comes to experience and technique, she won't lose to anybody. She doesn't show her emotions very much, but she has a unique backstory, a secret mission, and has lived a harsh life, which made me want to wish for the best for her, even though she starts off as an enemy. In this video, we'll share a chronological summary of Annie Leonhardt's life, starting from her childhood, and also go over the hints we were left that she was the female Titan before it was revealed. Please be aware, this video contains spoilers up to the final chapter of the manga. The birth of Annie. Annie was originally born into a Marleyan family. She was supposed to have lived a happy life, but it turns out she was born to a Marleyan mother after she had had an affair with an Eldian. Because of this, she was abandoned shortly after birth. She was taken in by an Eldian man who had found her as a baby, and he raised her inside Marley's concentration camp for Eldians. He was very strict and trained her from an early age in the fighting techniques that would later become her specialty. Annie's relationship with her adoptive father was far from how any parent would treat their child. And at the time, he treated her as if she was nothing more than a tool. He made sure to teach Annie all the fighting techniques he knew in order to train her to become a Marleyan warrior, so he would be an honorary Marleyan and be able to live a better life. Annie grew tired of her father's abuse, and as soon as she was strong enough to hurt him, she broke his leg and left him with a limp permanently. Even though he knew he'd never be able to walk properly again, her father was happy, saying that with this, she could kill enemies even without a weapon. Even though they weren't related by blood, he did raise her, so eventually, those feelings between a father and a daughter did develop. We find this out on the day that Annie was chosen to join Reiner and the others as a warrior and set out for Paradis Island. Annie's father got down on his knees, crying and apologizing for everything he had done to her. He admits that he was wrong and begs Annie to come back alive. The man became Annie's father to use her to achieve his own goals, but ended up becoming her real father in the end. This was the beginning of a change in Annie's attitude towards life, which she had never found worth living. And returning home to her father was perhaps the first goal she'd ever had a desire to achieve, sneaking into Paradis Island as a warrior. Annie trained hard and became a Marleyan warrior candidate, and eventually inherited the female Titan. In addition to having a versatile body with high speed and endurance, the female Titan is the Titan that most easily manifests the abilities of other Titans by drinking their spinal fluids. This utility, paired with Annie's fighting skills, was a perfect match. Annie, Reiner, Bertolt, and Marcel were chosen as the members of this mission to infiltrate Paradis Island in order to capture the founding Titan's power. They snuck into the walls in the year 845, taking advantage of the chaos caused by destroying Wall Maria. While living in the walls, she tried to gather information about the founding Titan and became a member of the 104th class of cadets in order to get even more valuable information. It's here that we first see Annie in the story. Annie as a cadet. After her time as a cadet, she graduated 4th place in her class and was a very skilled cadet. Instructor Shadis said the angle of entry of her slashes was impeccable, and she cut deeply into all of her targets. Everyone looks down on her fighting techniques because they're no use against Titans, but we get to see how useful they are later in a scene where Annie's teaching Eren her fighting techniques. Mikasa was in 1st place, Reiner in 2nd, and Bertolt 3rd. But it's hard to believe that Annie's grades were lower than Reiner's, who was known for having the lowest scores back when they were warrior candidates in Marley. Because of this, it's highly likely that Annie, and Bertolt for that matter, were cutting corners and hiding their true potential so they wouldn't be too conspicuous. While most of the top scorers chose to join the Scouts, Annie joined the military police because she thought as a member of the military police, she'd have a better chance at finding out more about the founding Titan. After that, the female Titan suddenly appears before the Scouts during the 57th Exterior Expedition and is able to take out many of the Scouts and even Levi's elite squad, demonstrating its overwhelming power. In a battle with Eren in Titan form, the female Titan defeats him with a swift kick and succeeds in capturing him, not even realizing that he's the founding Titan. Thanks to help by Levi and Mikasa, he manages to get away from her before she successfully escapes with him. At this point, I still hadn't realized that the female Titan was Annie, but let me know if you guys had already noticed. There were actually several hints in the story pointing to the fact that Annie was the female Titan. First, in the conversation between Annie and Reiner in Chapter 7 of Volume 2, there are Titans swarming near them, and the situation is dire. Annie asks Reiner what he wants to do, and Reiner replies that he doesn't want to do anything right now until they gather around more. If he was a human, waiting until the Titans gathered around more would seem like the stupidest thing to do. But their true goal was to draw out the heir of the founding Titan. So they were planning on breaking more walls and letting even more Titans in. Annie's question here was an indirect way of asking him about their real mission, and so was Reiner's reply back to her. Even though this isn't direct proof that she's the female Titan, it is proof that her and Reiner are up to something. Next, in Chapter 9, there's a scene where Reiner strongly insists on helping Eren as a Titan before everyone knew that that was Eren. No one else would think that it would make sense to risk your life to protect a Titan from other Titans. But here, Annie agrees with him. Up until this point, Annie up till now has been doing everything to avoid dangerous situations. So it was very out of character for her to agree to help this random Titan unless she knew something that everyone else didn't. They wanted to save him in order to bring the attack Titan back to Marley. They do something similar with Ymir later. She returns to Marley and gets eaten by a warrior candidate. That would have been Eren's future if they had succeeded in capturing him. In Volume 5, Chapter 21, there's a scene where the soldiers' 3D maneuver gear is being inspected. Annie's 3D maneuver gear actually belonged to Marco, who she had left to die recently. Armin notices all the familiar nicks and cuts in her 3D maneuver gear and realizes that it belonged to Marco. Since Marco didn't make it, this is when he first started to suspect Annie. In Volume 6, Chapter 23, Armin covers his face when he gets close to the female Titan. He guessed that she was after Eren and gets her to stop moving by tricking her into thinking she's already killed Eren. When this happens, Armin thinks that not only is this Titan 100% intelligent, it's actually someone that they know. Annie's Crystallization. After the fight with the female Titan outside the walls, Armin asks Annie to help Eren escape before he's handed over to the military police. Annie agrees because it's another attempt to capture Eren, but it turned out to be a trap set by the Scouts because they knew that Annie was the female Titan. When she knows she's caught, she doesn't even try to hide it and transforms into a Titan right inside the Stohes district, trying to escape on her own. Eventually, Eren finds his determination and also turns into a Titan, but this time it was a very evenly matched battle. Annie almost escapes by climbing the wall, but Mikasa stops her by cutting off her fingers. As she falls, she remembers her promise to her father to come back alive. With her last ounce of strength, before Eren eats her, she uses a Titan ability to lock herself inside of a crystal and falls into a deep sleep, coming out of the crystal. After the battle, they imprisoned her deep underground and she slept inside the crystal for 4 years. During that time, Armin visited Annie often and talked to her even though she couldn't talk back. In chapter 124, Thaw, Annie's crystal melts, and she joins the story once again. She runs into Hitch, who was patrolling the area, and even though they fought when they first saw each other, she ends up helping her escape, taking her outside to have her first meal in 4 years. Here, she randomly bumps into Armin and Connie and decides to help them stop the rumbling. At this time, the rumbling had already begun, and tens of millions of Titans were marching their way off of Paradis Island. Liberio, where Annie's father lives, would be one of the first places to be crushed. Annie didn't want her father to be killed by the Titans, so she joins Armin and the others to stop Eren. But once she hears that Liberio is gone, she loses her will to fight. Reuniting with her father, Annie and the others manage to escape from Paradis Island after winning against the Jaegerists who were supporting Eren. However, the rumbling is progressing so quickly that no matter how fast they go, they can't save Liberio. This is when Annie decides to give up on fighting. She leaves Armin and the rest of the scouts, evacuating with Gabby and Falco on the Azumabito family ship. But Gabby and Falco realize they're not ready to give up and head in Eren's direction to fight with everyone else. Annie goes with them, and they join the fight against the previous generations of the 9 Titans. After the final battle with Eren gets rid of all Titan powers, Annie manages to reunite with her father, who escaped to Liberio before it was too late. So, after all these years, she was finally able to fulfill her promise to her father to return home alive. In the final chapter, Annie says that Eren told them to live long lives. But what about him? She says they never asked for his help and calls him a reckless idiot. After that, we see what everyone's doing 3 years later. But what I'm personally curious about is if Annie and Armin got together or not. Armin was the one who exposed her identity, but if she felt bad about what she was doing, maybe that's actually a good thing. The way she laughed when she got exposed was also kinda crazy, but I think she might have liked Armin back then. Bertolt also seemed to have feelings for Annie, and since Armin inherited the Colossal Titan from Bertolt, that might have strengthened his feelings for her too. We never get the details in the end, but it seemed like things were going in a good direction. So I'm just gonna say that that's what happened. Alright, that's all we have this time for Annie. Do you think she ended up marrying Armin? Let me know in the comments. Thank you for watching. I hope to see you again in the next video.